Hello, friends. Welcome back to Freakish Fridays. Tattooed Biker here. And tonight I have a very special episode in store for you. I received a chilling collection of true paranormal experiences from my very good friend and fellow YouTuber, Kitty, over at Pine Box Tales. I have tremendous respect and admiration for her, both as a content creator and a person. And she's graciously shared her real life, true horror experiences of buying and living in an actual haunted house. Are you ready to dive into this eerie journey with me? If so, better turn on your nightlight, because we're about to go on one creepy ride. Many years ago, I was really excited to be purchasing my first home. The year was 1986. Of course, back in 1986, in the pre-internet days, it was very different. No technology, information, or hearing about the experiences that other people have had. If I had the technology and the internet, I likely would have handled things differently. I may have tried to resolve the problem. I was just 20 years old, inexperienced with home ownership, and because there was no internet, if there was someone that could help me with what I was about to experience, I wouldn't know where to find them. The house was being purchased through a man I knew, and we struck up an owner-financed agreement. I put down several $1,000s with monthly payments to follow directly to him, taking lenders out of the equation. It worked out well for both of us since I was pretty young and probably wouldn't qualify through a traditional bank, and the house needed a ton of work. It was old and had been badly neglected. It was definitely what you would call a handyman special. So this agreement solved any issues that either party had. I did have a real estate attorney, so I felt confident in the agreement. In hindsight, there were many red flags early on that myself or my boyfriend Jeff should have made more of, and should have asked questions or should have made us walk away. The house was a bit of a cliche. A very old house where supposedly the last occupant passed away at, and it's not just close to a cemetery, it's practically inside of the cemetery, without even a fence to separate the home and the graveyard. I didn't want superstitions to keep me from the home, and I didn't want to be known as the person that was too spooked to live next door to a cemetery. As for the red flags, for instance, the carpenter that had been there hanging new kitchen cabinets left numerous tools, expensive tools, some still plugged in. He never came back for them. It looked as if the carpenter took a lunch break and just never returned. It was odd, and knowing what these tools cost, that really should have been the first clue. Over the spring and summer of that year, we gutted the second floor, and then began bringing this house up to date. New wiring, insulation, new walls, paint, wallpaper, etc. In just that period from April till September, I invested over $8,000 in just material. We did almost all the work ourselves, along with the help of my brother, who was a knowledgeable contractor. This house really needed a ton of work. It was built in the mid-1800s and hadn't had any significant improvements in quite a few decades. It still had gas lanterns on the wall, unworking, of course. The plumbing was extremely old and needed a complete overhaul. The wiring was also very old. It was that wiring that was still wrapped in some sort of cloth. The last time this house had any work done was 1941. New wallpaper. When we peeled it off, we found the date written on the wall underneath. Getting this house current was a huge undertaking, but I thought that it would be worth it, as I could see the possibilities. I did have odd feelings in some places, and of course I wouldn't ignore those feelings today. But back then I told myself that I was just being silly, and I'd get used to my new surroundings. Every time I had feelings of being watched or just being creeped out, I'd convince myself that I was just being stupid. The basement really bothered me. It really scared the hell out of me, but I can't explain why. The washer was down there, so I would have to go down occasionally. I grew up with a washer in the basement and never had any fear of them before. So I couldn't understand or explain why I feared that basement so much. And I was even afraid of it during daytime hours. The attic didn't bother me at all, but on the second story, one bedroom disturbed me at times. The second floor balcony also felt creepy, and the bathroom had this awful feeling of dread. It always felt like you were being watched. There were certain places in the house that made you feel like you were entering somewhere that was separate. A very strange feeling that just made you feel like you'd stepped into a completely different environment, and it caused your equilibrium to be affected. I tried telling myself that it was all in my head, blaming it on not being used to living so close to a cemetery, and I didn't want to admit that to anyone, because I thought I'd be looked at as childish with a house being next door to a graveyard. The house had an old beauty to it, though. There were unique qualities that could make this home a gem if it just got the work done. The layout, good use of space, and interesting features, such as gorgeous stained glass windows, the second story enclosed balcony, dumbwaiters, and a durable slate roof made this home a diamond in the rough. After we finished gutting the second floor, we moved in. It was at the end of May or early June when we officially made the move. As we were living there, working on the house when we had time, we both started noticing some odd things. We occasionally talked about some of them, but always rationalized why they were happening. It was a very old house, so all sorts of issues should be expected. If the bathroom or kitchen water would turn on or off on their own, we just thought it would stop when we got around to installing the new fixtures. I knew our answers weren't always logical, but we wanted to explain it away. If cabinets or drawers or doors opened or closed on their own, we chalked that up to just settling. We talked about bringing the issue up to our contractor, my brother. We thought that maybe the house wasn't level and it was causing this, and maybe it could be fixed. Initially, it was only occurring occasionally, so nothing to make a big fuss over. There was one night in the bathroom that sticks out in my memory. The bathroom had an oversized clawfoot tub, and I love taking long baths. The bathroom also had this large row of built-in drawers. As I was relaxing in the tub one night, I was startled by 3 of the drawers popping out on their own. I quickly jumped out of the tub and hated using that bathroom after that. The one thing that was strange to me and started making me feel uneasy was the almost constant occurrence of decorative items, statues, knickknacks. They would rotate to face backwards. It happened just about every time I left the house and came back. And it didn't matter whether I was outside for 5 minutes or gone for 10 hours. Every single time I left the house, this happened. The smaller objects that weighed maybe around a pound didn't rattle me, but I had 2 large statues that were over 2 feet tall and each weighed easily more than 15 pounds. We lived on a busy street with lots of truck traffic that could cause vibrations, which is what I thought was causing the movement of the objects. But I had trouble believing that traffic vibrations could cause the movement of the large, heavy statues, especially when it occurred in a very short period of time. But we always found a way to make excuses for the oddities going on, and did a good job of convincing each other of them. I began to realize that many of the ways we rationalized things didn't really make sense, but I absolutely wanted to continue living there, so I made myself believe our excuses. It took us months to accept that anything paranormal was happening. As I mentioned, the house was located adjacent to a cemetery. This never really bothered us. We weren't people that were put off by something like that. We thought that was at least part of the reason that the price of the house was so low, and we saw it as a win for us. I even used to crack jokes about it, looking out the windows and saying, "Hello, Mr. Wasserman," or "Good morning, Mr. Finkelstein." I thought I was actually paying respects in a cute way. Jeff said I shouldn't do that. He thought it could be taken as being disrespectful. I would just roll my eyes and tell him to lighten up, that nobody was being disrespectful. Of course, after the activity escalated, I stopped doing it, just in case. The activity wasn't constant, and other than the individual odd things that would happen in the house, everything seemed to be going okay for the most part. But that was about to change. My first unexplainable event was one night, and I'm pretty sure it was at the end of August. Jeff and I were just enjoying a relaxing evening, and we were just about to sit down to after-dinner drinks and watch some TV. Suddenly, we heard really loud thuds coming from the kitchen in the next room. We ran in to investigate and figured out that it was the dumbwaiter that went from the kitchen all the way up to the full third-floor attic. Weird was all I could think. I thought this dumbwaiter was so cool, so we had it checked out thoroughly because I definitely had plans to use this unique feature. My brother said that an animal must have gotten in and chewed through the pulley ropes. He said he'd look at it soon. We never saw or heard any rodents or any other animals, and this dumbwaiter had been inspected, and we had even used it a few times recently. Upon further inspection, everything about the dumbwaiter seemed just fine. So what caused those noises to come from it? That very same night, right after the thuds from the kitchen, as we walked back out to the living room, about 50% of the plaster on the ceiling suddenly came crashing down on us, the furniture, and everything else. What the hell was all that we could say. My brother said it was nothing more than a coincidence, that the demolition we had done on the second floor in previous months had apparently caused plaster on the first floor to weaken and give out that night. Maybe it was just a coincidence, but my gut instinct were beginning to scream at me. About a week later, I was doing some work in a second-floor bedroom. It was my favorite bedroom because it had the attached second-story enclosed balcony. It was so unique, and I couldn't wait to enjoy using it. I walked onto this balcony and was suddenly overcome with massive amounts of hornets. A few days earlier, I was out in the yard and was stung by a couple on my head, so I was freaking out. I wasn't stung, but I quickly got the hell out of there and slammed the door shut behind me. I called my brother to come over and see if we could get the hornet's nest out of whatever it was. He practically took the whole room apart. There were no hornets, no nests. There wasn't even a single hornet left behind. Where could they have gone to? Just an hour before, there had been maybe 30 or more. Was I losing my mind? The joy of first-time home ownership was really starting to go away. But things calmed down. The rest of September was okay, and October was uneventful. I hoped that the weird stuff was over and we could move forward with more renovations in the spring. Halloween had just passed, and everything seemed to be going just fine. But then, just after Halloween, on November 2nd, things got crazy. The night of November 2nd changed everything. I didn't think about it right away, but eventually I realized that November 2nd was All Souls Day. I don't know if it's meaningful or not, but All Souls Day is celebrated by Catholics and some other Christian religions, but the cemetery that was adjacent to the house was a Jewish cemetery, so I don't know if this detail would matter. So that evening, we were about to sit down with some popcorn and watch a movie. In fact, we had just started it, and it was about 9 or 9:30 p.m. Suddenly, it sounded like 100 people were running around the outside of the house, banging on the walls, doors, and windows. And inside, many interior doors, drawers, and cabinets were opening and closing. The water was turning on and off, and it was like the house itself had suddenly sprang to life. The lights were going on and off, but even more terrifying was that the rear outside light was also going on and off. That was especially terrifying because there was only one switch for that light, inside of the house. There was just no way to explain what was happening. We froze in terror. We stayed huddled under a blanket on the couch, even hiding our faces. It would stop, but only for a while, and then the craziness would start up all over again. This activity went on for hours. This was as terrifying as any horror movie. Actually, it was worse because it was real, and we didn't have a clue as to how to deal with it. We thought that at some point the police would show up. The banging has to be driving the neighbors crazy and making them angry. I don't remember the time, but it was probably not much past 6 a.m. when the sun came up. We hadn't heard or seen anything happen for about an hour. We called Jeff's brother, who had a big house, and told him to make room. We were moving in. We left that morning with everything that would fit in the car. We came back only once more to get our furniture and just a few important items. We wouldn't even spend more than a few minutes there. I was simply done. We left a lot behind, and I lost a lot of money. Per the contract, I wasn't entitled to reimbursement of my down payment or any payments made. And the seller refused to reimburse me for all the work done. So all of the money spent on materials was lost if I left. The contract would be nullified if we left also. I wouldn't owe any further payments, but I would lose my entire investment. I was upset over the loss, but no amount of money could make me stay there, not even for one more day. I don't think I would ever live next door to a cemetery again either. I've included some photos of the house as it appears today. According to records, it was sold several times after I lived there, but maybe things are better now. I decided to check on the house through a Zillow search. That's something I haven't done in several years. I was under the assumption that the last time it was sold was about 4 or 5 years prior to me looking, and it seemed that it ended there. So I thought that everything must be okay now, being that it hadn't been on the market since that sale about 5 years prior. But in my most recent check on the house, I saw that it had changed hands in 2020 and 2021. Unfortunately, Zillow doesn't show the entire sales history, or even the most recent sales history. So that's just the activity that was displayed. So maybe there is still a problem with the house. And there it is. The captivating exploration of Kitty's haunted house encounters. Thank you, Kitty, for sharing your true paranormal experiences with us. Please be sure to follow the link and comment and check out her YouTube channel for more great, unexplained, and mysterious content. So thanks again, and until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe,